Hello, ladies. Welcome, welcome.
Hi,
Hi,
nice to
thanks for
be
having
here.
us.
Well, this is a very special episode for me too, because this is the first time that I'm having two beautiful ladies with me. So can you please tell me about yourself and explain what you are doing?
So I'm Allegra, and if you can hear, there's two voices besides Alex, Natasha, and together we are Beyond Your Wildest Dreams.
Mhm.
And we're on a mission to help moms and caregivers prioritize themselves, save time, and accomplish their goals.
Oh.
And so a little bit about us individually. So I've always been a planner. Again, this is Allegra. I actually I found a calendar from when I was 16 years old
Oh my
the
God.
other day, and I sent a picture of it to Natasha.
I know.
And it
Mhm.
actually illustrated some of the things that we talk about in our books and our courses. And so about when my child was about 5 years old, which for me now is, about 9 years ago,
Mhm.
I realized that there were some things in my life where I felt like I was having a lot of success, and there were other things in my life where I felt like I was struggling to gain traction, especially as a mom who had been really invested in my child. I breastfed for 3 years, right? So I was like super, not just hands on, I was boobs on. And
All your body, yeah.
yes, all my body. But when she was 5, 5 is a huge changing point for kids. They're just so much more, uh, you're not so worried about keeping them alive.
Mhm.
And I felt like I had a little bit more time to sort of think about what were these things that I was not happy with in my life. And they were sort of like the personal and the personal relationships and health area. Whereas like the business side of the financial side, I felt like I was doing well. And so I took a few days and I went to a Franciscan monastery, not too far, about an hour from my house. And I was just determined to figure out why I was succeeding in some areas and not having the results I wanted in other areas. And what I realized was that in the financial and business areas, I would come up with plans and I would execute on the plans, and I would post-mortem the plans and say, hey, did that work well? Did that not work well?
Mhm.
But in my personal relationships, like date night was not happening. And my health, I was not getting enough exercise. Before my kid, I just had so much time. I exercised a lot just because I had a lot of, like, I remember 90-minute yoga classes. I'm like, I can't imagine doing 90 minutes of one thing right now, just
Yeah.
because that's
Oh.
not the season of life that I'm in.
Mhm.
So what I realized was that planning was what made the difference. And I think it's because, I learned a lot of project management and habit formation skills when I was getting my MBA in school. And so
Mhm.
I just naturally applied it to like the business and financial side. But then when I started applying it to my personal relationships, date nights started happening. When I started,
Mhm.
applying it to my health, I was getting in movement that I needed to get in for myself. And that was sort of the impetus of me thinking of planning as this, planning makes everything easier
Yeah,
sort of skill.
and what about you,
Yeah.
Natasha?
Well, my planning journey is a little different than Allegra's.
Allegra's is very deep, like very like
Very deep. Yeah,
naturally
we're
coming,
different.
like
Seriously, and a lot of like self-reflection and really understanding like where she was at and that kind of thing. And I really just felt like I had my wheels spinning. Like I was very good at planning and still am at self-contained events, right? Like a professional summit or a concert or birthday parties for my kids. So much so that people would say like, hey, you should be a party planner, which is not my thing, right? But I
yeah,
loved doing it. And I was really, really good at things that are self-contained, like specific date, place, time, that kind of thing. Really great at that. And the only thing that really was feeling like my wheels were spinning and was when it came to me, when it came
Mhm.
to myself and my self-care and myself and my personal goals. If it had anything to do with just me, I would just take those plans or goals and put them on the back burner. And here I'm looking over at Allegra's life, and this is post her going to the monastery. And she's just killing it. She's a
Mhm.
homeschooling mom. She's got her entrepreneurial
Mhm.
businesses. Her family had just taken a month-long trip to Oaxaca. And I was like, girl, how do you do it? Right? Like, how is that how is it possible? I'm got my own entrepreneurial business and my kids, and I feel like I'm just keeping my head above water. So I had asked her, and she had started to informally coach me, basically saying, hey, this is the planner I use. This is how I use it. And this all kind of unfolded just like late 2019, early 2020, and so you can imagine what happened come March. Excuse me. I had said, okay, I'm going to sit down and really do this. And then March 2020 happened and everything kind of fell apart. But Allegra then checked in with me a few months in and said, hey, listen, are you, how's that been going for you? And we sat down and over Zoom, we started to kind of do a deeper dive into, she's like, well, this is how I use it. And this is the way I do it and that kind of thing. And as she was informally coaching me, I was really having all of these light bulb moments because I do see the power of planning. I have seen it active in my life, but the biggest problem was for me, the consistency, and then just also having a system in which, I could rely on. I had a system for specific events like parties and stuff, but I didn't have like a system for my life. Right. And so we started working together and I was like, girl, we can't keep this to ourselves. we gotta let other people know about it. And that's how Beyond Your Wildest Dreams was born. So we created a course and workshops and books and so forth, because we're not keeping it to ourselves. And that's why we're here today. We don't want to, we're not going to gatekeep.
Well, thank you for that, because I think like some people who are similar to Allegra, they have this system going on, but many women, I think they need, including me, they need a system. They maybe they have a system, but they need to make their system work, because sometimes we hear about one kind of like goal setting and all these things. But then I think we need that key to make it personal and work for us, because I think every person has their own thing going on, right? So it's not like one system is working for everybody. So
right. And I feel like we teach less of a system and more of a how to think about planning.
Yeah.
So that it can be flexible no matter what stage of life you're in. Because as I said, I've been planning my whole life, but obviously I didn't need to, I had a child later in life. I was 36 when I had a child. So for decades, things had just kind of been working well. I felt like I had a lot of free time because I didn't have a kid. And so really it was when my time shrunk because I had a child, and I'm also now part of the sandwich generation. My grandmother is almost 100, and I support my mother in helping to care for her. And so, it's just, especially women, we're kind of the shock absorbers in our society, where when something unexpected happens, a lot of times we have to adjust.
Yeah.
And if you don't have your mindset, if you don't have your priorities set properly, then you can end up sacrificing yourself on the altar of your family, right? You absorb so much that you have nothing to keep for yourself. And, your health goes out the door. I mean, I remember reading an article that said that caregivers' health actually decrease or gets worse, oftentimes more than the people that they're caring for, because they, and it literally, the article just mentions this. It goes into it. It didn't talk about like, well, is that why? Like, isn't that a bad thing? And how can we combat that? It was just sort of like, here's something we've observed. And
well, thank you for observing. And I could observe it myself too, but how to avoid it, like how to help out with that. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, and Natasha and I often talk about, on the airplane, they tell you to put on your oxygen mask first for a reason, because if you're passed out in the aisle, you can't help anybody.
Yeah.
And look, we don't want you to prioritize yourself just so that you can show up better for other people. We think prioritizing yourself because you're worth it is enough.
End of sentence right there. And full stop. Prioritizing yourself is enough, right? There. I just want to make that point. I want to make that point because as a mom, like I absolutely related to this whole oxygen mask analogy, so that I can be there for my family. But guess what? You're worthy of putting that oxygen mask on just for you, whether you have anybody responsible for you, whether you're responsible for anyone else or not. Go on, Allegra. Sorry, I didn't want to just jump in there and make that point.
Well, and so I just want to, the point that I was making was just, for years I thought about developing a planner, specifically because I had never found, quote unquote, the perfect planner. And for
Mhm.
about 5 years, I designed my own planner, and I would print out the pages and I would adjust it as I would need to adjust it. And after 5 years, what I realized is that there is no perfect planner, because life is fluid, life is changing. What needs to be flexible is your thought process about how you approach your life. And so that's really why I love what we do with Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, is we really teach people this skill of thinking about all the different things going on in life, how to prioritize them, how to break them down into little bite-sized steps so that you can actually make them happen. Whatever the goals are, whether it's painting your kitchen cabinets or starting a business, it requires this thought process.
Sure. Well, I'm gonna get into that thought process and get some tips from you. But first, I want to understand how your program is working. So, does it have a set structure? How long it takes? How do we start the process? Let's talk about that.
Okay, well, so just to go back to our mission statement, we want to help moms and caregivers prioritize themselves first, save time second, and 3, accomplish their goals. And the reason why we have them hierarchical like that is that it's kind of like, right, you need to prioritize yourself. That's you putting on your oxygen mask. Then you need to save time, right, so that you can have time to work on the bigger stuff later. And so we have 4 books, and we also have a 2-day course. And so let me just explain a little bit. So if you say to yourself, yes, I'd love to start a business, but I don't even have time to brush my teeth, then you need to learn to prioritize yourself. And that's where our book, Rock Your Morning, comes in. So Rock Your Morning, all of our books, by the way, are less than an hour to read. And they're not just books, they're workbooks, because the Sorting Hat put Natasha and I in Ravenclaw. We are big brain science nerds. And all the science shows that you don't really learn something until you apply it. Right? Like, so going back to that article where it was like, we've noticed this issue. It's like, okay, great. Tell us how to get out of that. Right?
Yeah.
We show you how to get out of it.
Pen to paper and start actually utilizing it. So that's, so we definitely, it's not so much a one size fits all. It's like Allegra said, we got to kind of assess, like, where are you? And so that first thing is, are you finding like, oh my gosh, I don't even have time to brush my teeth in the morning? So this is this book, Rock Your Morning, which is all about creating a morning ritual for yourself. And this is that self-care component, that part of like really taking care of yourself, because self-care is not just manicures and pedicures. Those are great, but self-care is healthcare. And the more I'm getting into closer to this milestone birthday that I got coming up, I'm realizing how important self-care is. And it's not just like a luxury or like a buzzword. I know it's super popular. Self-care is a very popular topic right now, but it's vital. It's like, it's critical. And so that's one of the things that I'd love to like drive home to your listeners, that, whatever portion of life you're in right now, taking care of yourself is so critical, for so many reasons. Right. And so that is always first and foremost the reason that we have our mission statements in that order. Prioritize yourself first. So Rock Your Mission is that first thing, and creating a morning ritual that works for you. And by the way, not to get it twisted, like, we're not talking about like get up an hour and a half early and now start doing this whole new thing. We're talking about inserting one new practice that has been something that really supports you in your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, whatever that might be. So starting small, starting with one thing. Maybe it's getting up and drinking 16 ounces of water first thing in the morning because you don't get enough water, and whatever it is, it could be something very simple like that. I've talked to Allegra countless times about my stretching journey. Like, I'm trying to get more stretching in. And guess what? I started with my stretching with 1 minute. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 1 minute more than I had been doing daily. Right. And now I've expanded to 2 minutes. Thank you very much. And eventually I'm going to be working that way up to 5-10 minutes and so forth. But we're talking about starting small. It's really important to start small inside of this particular category. Start small. You see big results if you do things. If I do that 300, that's 365 more minutes of stretching a year than I had been doing prior, right? So starting
6
small there.
hours of stretching.
Yeah, seriously.
No, I think that's the biggest mistake that people are doing. It's always like when they say, you know, let's take your example. I will start stretching. They think about stretching like for hours and hours, like for
Right.
30 minutes, for 40.
Right.
Like you said, just start with 1 minute, one move, and then build on it. And
Right.
it will be like a strong foundation, so you can build a better structure on a stronger foundation. So
100%.
keep
And
your foundation strong, take time for it, and see how is it working for you, right?
And let me tell you, 1 minute has, you know, I'm in that 1 minute, my timer goes off. And after doing that for a little while, I'm like, oh, I could go further. Next thing you know, it's 2 minutes. Next thing you know, it's 3 minutes. And not only that, the other thing that we really recommend inside of this particular area is going ahead and finding a place to stack that habit with another thing that you're already doing, right? So I'm already making a smoothie in the morning. So when I hit blend on my blender, that's when I do my stretch, because I'm going to stand there anyway for probably a minute, maybe 2. Sometimes, you know, so the blender may go for longer than it needs to. That's okay. But I'm going to be doing that anyway. So that so for me personally, like I'm going to make my smoothie every morning with my green powder and all this kind of stuff. Great. This is a perfect time to go ahead and put the stretching in, right? So try to tie it to something that you're already doing, if possible, like drinking the water. You're already waking up in the morning. So try to just have that be, oh, first thing I do is drink the water, or whatever. You can tie it into, you know, maybe you have that glass of water right next to something that you ever do every morning. Like maybe it's right next to your coffee, right? And you know, you're going to drink your coffee. It's like, wait a second, before I drink that coffee, I'm going to drink 16 ounces of water. And then you're going to run to the bathroom. But, you know, to try and put that with something that you're already doing, the likelihood of you consistently doing it increases that much more. Like Allegra said earlier, the brain science backs this up. Starting small and habit stacking give you greater success. And people also have trouble sometimes with the whole idea of like how long it takes to create a habit such as this. The popular conception is it's 21 days, you know, new habit challenge, blah, blah, blah. And 21 days, the research does not back up 21 days. It takes about 63 to create a new habit. And so this is one of the things, like a little just sidebar I wanted to mention, is just, you got to be gentle with yourself. You've got to allow yourself to have some realistic expectations. If you start now with a new habit and in 63 days, that habit is now something that's established, that's great. That's amazing. That in theory, then you could start 4 to 5 new habits a year, which doesn't sound like a lot. And we have, you know, just New Year's has just passed and everybody's got their New Year's resolutions that they're, you know, stacking in there, and they want to, like, you know, do 5, 6, 7 new things. Start simple, start small.
In a week, they
Right.
want to do that in a week. So that's
right. Exactly. It's not sustainable. And so there's a lot of, like, you know, especially when we're trying to create and sustain and achieve goals. There's a lot of, like, you know, bro culture and a lot of like masculine energy around, like, just do it and give 110% and fully commit and that kind of thing. And sure, that's great. But Allegra and I also like to say, from our vantage point, again, coming up on some milestone birthday coming up, from our vantage point, we see that like 70% effort gives you amazing results. And so what I mean by that is just like, you know, not to let yourself off the hook, but like some days you're going to have 100%, you know, show 100% effort, right? Some days will be 30, somewhere, you know, and somewhere in there, if you're consistently showing up 70% of the time, that is amazing. We both have stories about like doing 100% day, and she has 100% month where she did 100% of the things that she said she was going to do.
Not 100%. It was like 96%.
Okay. All right. But I had a day like that too, where I had like the whole thing just mapped out and listed and blah, 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 you know, and by the end of that day, I found myself on the freeway gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. And I'm just like, I did it, you know, but I was miserable and I was a psycho with my kids too. Like, I was not pleasant to be around. And here's the thing, I'm not making a case for being a slacker, but I am making a case for consistently showing up and imperfectly showing up. You know, I have a big problem with perfectionism, and partnering with Allegra has been an awesome thing because she's got more of a mindset of like, let's do it. let's just go ahead and do it. And I'm like, well, it's not perfect. I want to make sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. And she's like, let's step out of that comfort zone and go for it. And imperfectly perfect is excellent than absolutely perfect and not ever achieved or tried or risked, right? Risking it imperfectly and going for it, as opposed to holding back perfectly, and not going for it. Those are two totally different things. And believe me, you want to go for it imperfectly than never going for it at all.
And
so
also, I think learning from your mistakes. If some habits, some routines are not working, it's also teaching you something, right? It's also teaching you that you have to, take another approach, or check your system again, or check your goal setting again, and work on another thing. So I think sometimes people, they don't want to create habits, create routines, because they are afraid of the failure. But I think you have to, I don't want to sound very poetic, but you have to embrace it. You have to welcome it, learn from it, and just let it go, right?
Yeah. It's just information. It's just data. It's like, okay, so that didn't work that way, right? So what can I adjust? Or maybe this goal is really not something that I actually really want. Maybe it's what I think my family wants, or what I think I should be doing, right? So it's data. It's right. It's like, okay, so I say I want to do this. I'm having trouble making this happen. Either A, there's something about this I need to adjust. Maybe I need to be trying to do this at a different time of day. Maybe that kind of thing. And Alegre and I are huge proponents of assessments. Like, we do a monthly course correct, we like to say, with our alumni, and we do a yearly review, which is, something that so it's a way to check in and see what worked, what didn't work, and also celebrating your achievements too, these kinds of things. But you're absolutely right. The failure gives you information and lets you know what worked and what didn't work, and how maybe you can adjust.
And Natasha and I do a weekly conversation every Thursday at 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern. And if people you can tune in many places, but people tune in there and they can see like our own journey. Like for me, my Achilles heel is meditation. I have taken 8-hour-long courses. I've done all sorts of things with meditation. I've tried many different forms of meditation, and it continues to be something that eludes me. Now I'm experimenting because I've tried so many different things. And for decades, it's like meditation is the hardest thing for me. And now I am experimenting with meditating to solfeggio frequencies, or solfeggio. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's an Italian word. Solfeggio frequencies. And I'm enjoying that. But I also, last year, I had a solid 6 months where I was meditating with this one practice. And then for some reason, like, that practice was no longer speaking to me. So I'm not sure what it is that I'm going to learn on my crazy meditation journey, but we all, like, there are things that I am great at, and there are things that I still struggle with. We all have our challenges. And the thing with our book, Rock Your Morning, is that we don't tell you what to put into your morning ritual. We just tell you how to think about putting one together. And your morning ritual might be 5 minutes, it might be 15 minutes, but it has to be authentically you. It has to address your needs and fit with your life. So that's step one, prioritize yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we got I went off on a bit of a tangent, but yeah, that's the first place to look. And then if you're finding that you are needing to save time, right? Because that's the next category. We have a workshop and this book, 3-2-1 Done, this workbook on how to really strategize your to-do list, because and I've always been like a major to-do list maker, but it hasn't always been the most effective. And in fact, sometimes my to-do list would be anxiety producing as opposed to anxiety relieving. And so we have 3 strategies to help you with your to-do list to have it be more effective. And again, this is everything we talk about too, is like some of these strategies you might instantly be able to assimilate, and some of them may take some time to really incorporate them. And we really encourage people to like have this idea of like, take what you like, see what works. If it doesn't speak to you, put it on a shelf, maybe come visit it again later, and really customize it to yourself. Like, so when we say we have like a program, it's very customizable. It's very much like, where are you in your journey? Where are you in your process? And, we're floating these
tips that have worked for us and continue to work for us. But, you know, even if you incorporate just one, just like the habits, if you just incorporate one, that might start really making a difference for you.
And 3, 2, 1 done. 3 simple strategies to get your to-do list done. This is definitely our most instant win of our books. Like, you will walk away from this workbook immediately more productive, because basically there are a lot of things that we do around our to-do list that are counterintuitive or counterproductive, actually, that keep us from actually making progress on things we want to make progress. So what we like to say is, you know, in the planning community, there's an axiom: for every 1 minute you spend planning, you save 10 minutes of doing. And this workbook, really, you will never look at a to-do list and not know where to start again, because it gives you a clear framework. So Rock Your Morning, it takes a little bit longer because you have to, you know, it takes a while for supplements to show the benefits, right? It takes a while for the stretching to feel intuitive. That just takes a while. So, but 3, 2, 1 done, you're going to immediately see the benefits.
Right.
Yeah. And then if you're ready to start thinking about these big goals that you have, or if you're ready to say, like, you know what, I just kind of want to think about my life more holistically, that's where our 2-day course, it's a 2-day virtual course. It's January. We only hold it once a year. It's January 20th and 27th, 2024. And if you can't attend it live, you do have access to the videos for 3 months. And we limit it to 3 months for a reason, because brain science shows that if you give yourself unlimited time to do something, you just keep putting it off.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you need a deadline,
So-
you know? Like
yeah.
you need-
Exactly. Because chances are, if we bandied back and forth, like, should we give access for a year or unlimited? And we limited it to 3 months, not because we're stingy, but because we were like, we want you to use this, and we know that if we give you a deadline, you'll actually probably do it.
And
Right,
they also
so-
build on each other. So if you do module 1 and then you wait 3 months to do module 2, you're going to have forgotten what you did in module 1.
Oh, gosh.
You're going to have to start back over. So
Uh.
this way you allow 1 to 2 weeks between modules, and that's enough time that you haven't forgotten what you learned.
Right. And the 2-day course is basically broken up into day 1, where we call day 1 excavate, which is just kind of like, let's take a look at really what it is that you are committed to. What are the things that really spark excitement and joy for you? Are there dreams that have been buried? Maybe your old dreams don't work for you anymore. And we walk you through processes about how to excavate that, how to clear it off the debris of everyday life that maybe has been cluttering that up, and take a look at what you really truly like is your desire to do, be, have in this world. And so it's really a lot more of like a deep dive, deep digging into your own self and what works for you. And plus, one of the main things that we purport as like a motivating factor that then allows for you to have this like long-term life design is, what are your values? What is it that what is it that you really value as a person, and then prioritizing those values, because some values, you may have a myriad of values, but they're not all necessarily equal, right? If everything is all have the same value, then again, you may not know where to look first, or what to go ahead and go after first. So that day 1 is really all about that, a deeper dive. It's really kind of about like taking a look into yourself and teasing it out and seeing what's there in just kind of a more holistic way. I know for me, part of my problem with backburnering constantly is because, you know what, there was a dirty diaper I had to take care of, or somebody had to be picked up from school, right? So it's constantly like life, these things that happen in life that need immediate attention, always got precedent over what is Natasha looking for, feeling. I have this great idea to start this other business that I really wanted to start. It really aligns with what I want to do. Awesome. Great. Oh, wait, my kid is sick. I got to go, oh, there's a birthday party. I got to go get presents for, you know what I mean? Like, and so that would constantly be backburnered. But when you get into like, okay, here are my priorities. This is how I want to show up in my life. This is how I want to show up in my world. This is how I want to show up for myself and others. Okay, great. And really being able to see what's important first. So that's day 1. Day 1 is about that excavation, and day 2 is about execution. And how do you then, now you've got it all laid out, like what it is that you want to do, be, and have, how you get there. That's day 2.
And Natasha's experience of being sidetracked by daily life is not unusual. There's a statistic that people spend more time planning a vacation than planning their lives.
Okay.
And it, it's just like, if you think about it, you say, oh yeah, how much time have I spent planning my life? And that's just very normal. I mean, especially, as American, Natasha and I are both Americans. There was no plan your life class in school. My parents never sat down and said, let's talk about planning your life. And, to be
honest with you, I also never seen them doing it actively too.
Yes.
Like my parents, so it wasn't something that I learned also by watching them.
Which is the natural way to learn.
They were talking about it. They are talking about their dreams, their plans, but I never, to be honest with you, see them actually like sitting down and planning it. So yes, like so you are great, guys. Like we need to get your help.
Well, that's on our own. That's part of why we are so, not just the fact that we're parents and caregivers, but also we also feel like the greatest opportunity for creating change in culture is by empowering parents, because they will, if it's useful to them, they will teach it to their kids, right? Every December, our family sits down and we take out our calendars and we plan our mommy daughter and daddy daughter days and our date nights. We lay them out for the following year. And that's a habit that my daughter will have seen for decades by the time if she has her own family. Because that's the most natural way to learn, is through osmosis. But we're trying to help create that culture change now by teaching parents how to do this so that they can pass it on. And so, this whole idea of prioritization of values, I think most people think that they have values, but if you ask them to name them, they probably wouldn't be able to name them. And if you ask them to put them in hierarchical order, they definitely wouldn't be able to do that, which is why so many times, right, someone has something planned with their family and then they get a job, something to do with their work comes up. And what do they end up picking? And it's like, well, if you really sat down and thought about what are your priorities, you might have picked differently. I'm not saying you would have for sure, because maybe there's a reason to do the work thing. But
there's an urgency or something,
but being really clear about your priorities allows you to establish strong boundaries. And it helps you to say no to certain things, because no, that's not a priority of mine. Actually, that's sort of where this prioritization came from. I heard the story about Richard Branson, and he had spoken to a group of CEOs, and one CEO was so enamored with Richard Branson that the CEO wanted to bring Richard Branson to speak at the CEO's company. And the CEO kept throwing money at Richard Branson's people, like, I'll pay $50,000. And they said, no, I'll pay $200,000. No. And the CEO was like, what will it take? And Richard Branson's people said, sorry, we weren't clear, but Richard has 4 goals. And if speaking at something does not move one of these goals forward, it's an immediate no.
Oh.
And so just to have that kind of clarity, to be able to say, look, he's Richard Branson, right? $200,000. I make that in a second. But I've had similar opportunities where, look, if you look me up, you will see that I have had a very interesting entrepreneurial journey. And it's part of why I feel like I can talk about this stuff so well, is because I have done a lot of different things in my life. And there was always this bleed over period where when I stopped one thing and started a new thing, people who knew me from the past would say, hey, do you want to do blah, blah, blah thing? And sometimes it was $15,000, $20,000. And because I had become really clear that, nope, this is not what I want my legacy to be, I'm no longer spending my time on it. Here's someone who can help you. I was able to say no, rather than, being seduced by the money, which would then draw my attention away from what I really want to focus on. And
spoiler alert, having these kinds of boundaries circles back around to self-care again. Right. And really being able to, like, having boundaries is also a form of self-care. So yeah, drinking your water and doing your stretching and getting your supplements, self-care, but also having clear boundaries and being committed to the things that is self-care. Right. So it's really, it's very, very helpful, right? Because I personally have, so Allegra and I, while we have this business together, we're very different though too. So I do want to say that, like, getting my boys, and I mean all three of them, my husband included, to sit down with a calendar at the end of the year, they would break out into hives. There would be a revolt, right? And so we do it a little differently in my home. And you know, like the way it works a lot with our family, like I do on Sunday night, I'll do a thing, we call it the partner page. And I just write out to my husband, like each day, like the things that he needs to know about our life that week, right? Like if you're picking the kid up for this, or I've got this, or we got a game after here, whatever it might be, and our date nights, right? That kind of thing. So he doesn't like to really think too much past, like, you know, tomorrow. So we handle it that way. And, you know, I have hope for us. We can maybe someday and sit down with all of our calendars. But I say this because you know, it's a little bit different for everybody. We may not all go ahead and do it this way, but the prioritization thing too, for me personally, like I mentioned earlier, if something comes up in the moment that seems urgent, or, you know, has a pull on me, even if I've got something else planned, my default used to be, oh, I can find a way to squeeze it in, because I hate saying no to things. I've got major FOMO. Like, I just, like, it really, I'm like, I'm going to miss out on something. Right. And realizing that, like, A, I can't physically do it all. B, maybe I really don't want to, just because something's offered to me. I sometimes didn't consider, hey, is this really in alignment, right? Is this really in alignment with what it is that I want to do? And so my default would be, so, you know, maybe if you don't have all of your priorities hierarchically ordered at this moment, look at your habits. What are you saying yes to everything just because somebody is asking you to, right? And that could be anything from a PTA thing to a party to, you know, an event. If I find myself thinking or saying the word squeeze, like, oh, I could squeeze that in, that's a full stop. No, pause. That's a no, right up, just like Richard Branson's no. That for me would be a hard stop no. Now that no could be no to this new opportunity, or it could be like a no, let me stop and, you know, really assess, hey, is this new opportunity more in alignment with what I'm now being with my life, as opposed to what I already have planned. But generally, if I use the word squeeze, and it's been so helpful to me, because Allegra was there yesterday, I said the word squeeze out loud, and I was like, bing, that's my red flag. And so maybe it's not the word squeeze for you. Maybe it's a different word, but like, find out what that thing is that you use to.
It was so funny too, because it was for something for me.
It was something for you. Yeah.
She was like,
you know, I was like,
when's your daughter's concert? And I told her, and she's like, I think I can squeeze. And I was like, oh, she's not coming.
Yeah. Because I could find a way to squeeze it in. I really could, you know, but it would be making that day even crazier than it already is. Right. And as much as I want to support her daughter, and we love music and I'd love to go to the concert, it's going to have to be a no, especially right now, you know, like we're in that holiday season and post-holiday season now too, where, like, you know, people are getting back to their lives and things, you know, after that whole holiday season. It's a really good time to assess, like, okay, is there something that am I squeezing things in just for the sake of it? Or is it really in alignment with what I say I want to do and be and have?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so you have those 2 days workshop, but you also have like a regular coaching program too, right?
Yes, we do. We do recommend that people who want to be coached by us go through Harness the Power of Planning, just so we can have the same verbiage, so that we know that we're thinking about things the same way.
I see.
Obviously, if someone has you know, if someone's further along on their planning journey, like people come to us at different stages in planning. And so and by the way, I know the word planning is kind of a squishy word. So let's just define planning as thinking strategically about how you want to go about doing things so that you can save time and energy. Right. So some people might be further along on their planning process, and maybe we could help them, right? Maybe they're like, I have my values and they're in hierarchical order. I know I'm clear about these goals that I want to accomplish in the next 1, 5, 10 years. You know, we could probably help them, but we do usually ask people to go through Harness the Power of Planning first.
I see. Okay. Okay. Well, I think we talked about your program, and we talked about those great tips that you were also using in your program. And as you know, I have 3 questions for you too, so that, you know, our listeners who are in their 30s can maybe find something relatable in their life right now and start questioning themselves. So, and my first question is, what were the breaking points in your 30s that made you maybe change something in your life or in yourself?
Oh, such a great question.
Yeah, great question.
So this is Allegra. I'm the sort of person who really seems to exhibit stress physically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, if people ask me if I'm emotionally stressed, I rarely feel it, but my body will be like, nope, slow down, girl. You're going too fast. And there were 2 points in my life where I was literally physically just waylaid by my body because of stress. Oh, you seem to have disappeared for a second.
Oh,
Me?
you're still here.
And okay, let me see there. So, so the first time I was in college, and that was earlier, but in my 30s, I was working for a company and I had taken on 2 people, 2 levels above me had quit. And so I had taken on their responsibilities.
Oh my God.
And I was not being paid more money for it. And the company was taking advantage of the fact that I was a capable person, and they were not telling me when this was going to stop. And it went on for months. And at that point, I didn't have the greatest body mechanics. I was always wearing heels. I would always sit with my legs crossed. And so literally, I was literally bedridden for 3 months in my 30s with a frozen up back, which they ended up finding a herniated disc. But honestly, I'm not it's just so fascinating, the body, the way it works, because they said, you know, with a disc this herniated, you shouldn't be able to stretch the way you've been stretching. That's why they didn't look for a herniated disc, because they were like, there are things you can do. And my mobility was so impaired. And I think I was 32. I was 32. My mobility was so impaired that after 3 months of physical therapy, traction, massage, all these things, steroids to help with the inflammation, the doctor said to me, I don't think it's going to get any better. I don't think you're going to be able to be as athletic as you used to be. And if you get pregnant, it's going to be very painful and difficult. And oh yeah, by the way, you need to stop wearing heels. And I was 32. And what the doctor said to me was exactly what I needed to hear. Right? What did he have a good bedside manner? Absolutely not. No. Did he bolster me up? No. But you know what? I needed that challenge, honestly. Natasha and I talk a lot about reframing. Looking back now, I realize that he didn't mean to help me, but he helped me because he waved a red flag in front of me. And in my mind, I said, F you. You have no idea what I'm willing to do to get my mobility back. And instead of doing the 1 hour a day of physical therapy that I was assigned, I treated getting better like it was my job, because I had taken a leave of absence from my work. And so literally 6 to 8 hours a day, all I did was physical therapy. And within a year, I was able to ski a black diamond slope. And when I got pregnant, literally no issues.
No complication. Yeah.
No. And in fact, now I hike with a 30-pound backpack with my dog towing me because my back is super strong now. So, what I would say is that listen to your body, don't believe what the limitations people want to put on you. Stand up for yourself. I ended up quitting that job shortly thereafter. they had promised that they would offer me a separation package that included consulting for them. I gave them 6 months notice. The last day that I was there, they're like, oh, can you just wait? We still don't have it. I said, nope, I'm out of here. Like, clearly you're not valuing me, and I'm gone. So, know your worth, follow your inner voice, and don't believe other people's limitations.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Very well said. Very well.
At any point in life. The breaking point for me, quite honestly, in my 30s, and it was too big of a breaking point to not mention, but my journey with my personal relationship to alcohol and drinking really came to a head when I was 33. And so I wound up going into a 12-step program, and I get that that's not right for everyone, but and I have to say that it wasn't to the point where I was in such a state that everyone around me would say, oh my goodness, she has a problem. But I just knew internally the way that I was thinking and relating to alcohol was not healthy. I was thinking about it too much. I recognized other people didn't think about it the way that I did. Like if I was going out with friends or so forth, and I would tell myself, all right, I'm just going to have one drink tonight. That one drink would always turn into more than that. Like it was those kind of noticing that was not, and it was not really something that I could, that I had agency over. It had more agency over me. And so I started to, I had a suspicion when I was around 32 that like, ooh, this may be unhealthy. Prior to that, I was like, oh, this is totally fine. This is a normal way to relate to alcohol. Like I still very much had like a party attitude and whatnot, didn't have a drink every single day. But when I did drink, I really, really drank. Right. And in my 20s, like I was like, that seems normal. Right. And people who didn't drink were abnormal in my mind. Right. So, that just having that inkling that this is not healthy, and, kind of like circling around the idea of never having a drink again was like inconceivable to me at that point, early in like 31, 32. Around 33 though, I realized the way I'm thinking about this and the way that I relate to it is unhealthy. And that was such a huge turning point, such a huge breaking point. I can't not mention it. And I get that that's not everyone's journey, but if there's something in your life that overtakes your thoughts, and you find yourself thinking about it more, that could be a number of different things, right? It could be finding relief inside of shopping or relationships or whatever that is. For me, it was alcohol, and I'm grateful today that I was able to stop. And I get that everybody's journey around this is very, very different. And I'm grateful today that it was what we would call like a high bottom. Like I didn't have to bottom out and be, sleeping on a park bench in order to realize that, hey, maybe this is not very healthy for me. So I was fortunate in that way. But if there's something that is getting in the way of other things that you say you prioritize, because it was getting in the way of relationships for me, it was getting in the way of career and financial goals, in that whenever it was presented as an opportunity, like in my mind, I was like, oh, well, of course I'm going to go out and party with friends. Of course I'm going to, when maybe I should have stayed home and, worked on something, that kind of thing. So that would almost always take a precedent. And so that was my breaking point for sure. And I can absolutely relate to my life prior to choosing to stop drinking and after. I do believe that there are aspects of my life that would not have been possible had I not stopped drinking. And that was well over 16 years ago at this point. And it's definitely made things possible for me. And, I get that not all of your listeners have this experience. In fact, my husband is like the most normal drinker. Like he can have a 6-pack in the fridge for months and have like a beer. And then like 3 months later have a beer. And like, that was not how I thought about it. I was like, oh, there's a 6-pack in the fridge. Well, we have to drink that 6-pack. Right. So that was my thinking, and honestly, I stopped drinking at the time. I was a bartender, quite honestly.
God.
So yeah, I was fortunate that for whatever occurred for me in this way, that it suddenly became just off limits to me. And so, you know, and again, I understand that's not everybody can bartend while they decide to stop drinking. So I don't really know. I honestly don't know how that was possible for me, but I do know that my life today would not look the same had I continued to drink. And I definitely don't have any judgment on people who do drink by any stretch of the, but if there is something in your life that does stand in the way of the other things that you say you want, I would say really take a good look at it. And, you know, even if right now it feels inconceivable that you could cut it out, I 100% felt like it was inconceivable that I could cut it out, until I really started playing around with the idea of, well, what would it be like if I did cut it out? And, you know, and suddenly it went from being inconceivable to be like, well, I guess you can live a life without drinking, and some people do it, you know, like prior to that I was like, how do you have fun? How do you get through the day? Like, how do you get to the end of the day and not have a glass of wine, or what, you know, how do you go to someone's wedding and not toast with champagne? Like, that's impossible, you know? And over time that did shift, but it was at least a year's journey of just like going from like, that's completely inconceivable to like, oh, I guess that's possible, you know, and saying, and I mean, to use one of the 12-step adages, at that time, it really was one day at a time. I'm like, well, for today, I'm just not going to do it. Right. And so this idea of like, it kind of circles back to this idea of like doing your habit 1 minute at a time. Right. You know, so it's like, well, for today, I'm not going to have a drink. Like, I don't have to think about, because originally my first resistance to this whole idea of maybe stop drinking was, I was like, well, my sister at her wedding someday, this is, by the way, she's not engaged or anything at this point. I was just like, at her wedding someday, I'm like, I need to have a glass of champagne to toast her, you know, like, I'm like, that's inconceivable. How could you do that without, you have to have alcohol to do that. Right. So like, I went from that to like, well, just today, I'm not going to do. So like, I was trying to think like 5 years from now, how am I not going to have that drink? Right. You know, so that's not helpful thinking, right? It's just like, what about today? And so it does kind of circle back to this idea of habit formation, really, you know, like just for today, I'm not going to have a end of shift wine, which was one of the things where I worked, that everybody got to have like a glass of wine at the end of your shift. Like that was one of the perks of working at a French bistro. But you know, like, and so just from that, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to have that glass of wine at the end of the shift. Cause quite honestly, it turned into 2 or 3 glasses in the past. Right. So it would just never be one. So that was my breaking point. And if you find that there's something in there that's in the way, you know, inquire about it, take a look at it, and recognize that you don't have to make a lifelong decision about it today. If it's something to look at, you can look at it for just today, today. Does this fit into what it is that I say I want in my life, or does it not?
Yeah, I think, you know,
I just realized that I have a final thought just to put the period on my breaking point. I had been thinking for years about starting my own business. And so that experience was really the breaking point of starting that's when I started my entrepreneurial journey.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think both of you have like amazing points, like breaking points that you took as a great tool to change your life in a better way. And I think it also requires a lot of like self respect to realize what you are doing wrong or what is not working for you, and turning it to an advantage for yourself. So I think it requires a lot of self-respect and self-discipline. Well, which lead me to your second question, which is one thing that you swore by in your 30s that you don't believe in anymore.
Great. This is a great question. You go first.
I need to think about this one.
I need to think about it too. That is a hard one. You know, because I really, I would say this, like in my 30s, I definitely didn't think, I mean, it does, I already kind of expressed one of the things where I was just kind of like, how do you live life without celebrating with alcohol? You know, which did shift. And obviously you can live a very fulfilling, happy, fun life. Like I don't mind going to parties and people are drinking all around me and having a good time. And like, it doesn't bother me at all, that kind of thing. And I'm like, hey, it's possible for me to have a good time. But
And I'm
aside
the sort of person who people ask how many drinks I've had, and I don't drink at all. So
yeah, so it is possible to have a good time. But what is one thing that I swore by, like, this might sound like oddly specific. So when I first, we live in Southern California. I moved to Los Angeles. I'm not from here originally. And I moved here in my mid-20s. And I would say that from the moment I moved here, I was struck by, I'm like, for me, I was like, what a strange city, having grown up on the East Coast. To me, it was like, how do you raise a family here? How do you because it just seemed, especially the people that I was circling myself with, which were all at that time aspiring artists and people in the artistic realms and stuff like that. And I was like, how do you possibly find a way to like have roots here and that kind of thing? And I think I said multiple times, like, well, if I ever have a family, I'm leaving LA. There's no way I'm going to raise a family here. It's not possible. Right. In my mind. Right. And so I think that, and I literally said that many, many, many times. And so, and into my 30s as well. And I think that the takeaway here is that, like, you can find your community and you can find your roots and you can make a life and a home for yourself wherever you are, right? And the things that what I began to discover, because in LA was a means to an end for me. It was like, oh, I want to get into the industry, and that's why I'm here. Like, and so, everything else about this, yes, we're by the ocean and that's nice, but like, I didn't live by the ocean because that was expensive. So like, I'd go a few times a year, but that wasn't necessarily like a great, it wasn't a compelling piece of living here. Yeah. But I think the thing that I swore by, which is like, you can't really have a life here. And it sounds like it's very specific to LA, but I want to bring it into a more broader context where it's like, there's ways to find your community, your family of friends, your way of carving out the life that you want wherever you are.
Yes.
And that was what was, again, what was inconceivable to me became conceivable. And it wasn't even necessary. It wasn't out of necessity per se, but it was about finding the right tribe, I feel like. And what to me was not, I really swore by, like, geez, LA is just full of vapid people, and I'm never going to find a good, strong. Sorry, that was my fault. I know. And Allegra's making a face because she is what we call a native LA person. But this was my perception, not the truth. And so what I swore by was that, like, I'm just here for a means to an end, and you could really find a way to carve out a life and a place for yourself inside of the people you meet, right? And so, like, I really thought that, where I was dictating, the physical place where I was in the city that I was in was dictating whether or not I was going to have meaningful relationships, and that it's not possible here. And what wound up happening, quite honestly, is the opposite. I found really wonderful, like-minded people through different organizations, like through the church. That's how Alegre and I became friends, through different kinds of community, through the different artistic endeavors that I would engage in, and through music and different ways. So, like, I think I really looked at LA as a means to an end, and I really found like-minded community. And I've been here for over 20 years, right? So I really swore by, like, this is not the place for me. And maybe you find yourself in a place where it doesn't feel like where you are, but like, I found it started with finding one really good friend, and it blossomed out from there. And so I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but that's the first thing that came to mind.
No, I think that's exactly like what we were looking for.
Okay.
So I would say that the thing that I really believed in my 30s that I let go of completely was when I was practicing environmental interior design, and I loved it so much. It felt like I had met my soulmate in a career. But the more I practiced interior design, the less I was enjoying it for a number of reasons. Like, one, I was constantly in my car. I hate constantly being in my car. I'm, as Natasha mentioned earlier, I'm the sort of person who's very happy to like get something done and that's it. But sometimes clients are very perfectionistic and they're like, why are my countertops no longer looking the way they looked when they were installed? And I said, because you picked a stone that you cannot juice on and you're juicing on it every day.
Every
Like,
day.
that's just, I am not a magician. I am a designer. And eventually I realized that, and this is something that we do in our course, Harness the Power of Planning. There's a Japanese philosophy called Ikigai, which sounds really weird to anyone who speaks English. It sounds like a dirty person, but it's spelled Ikigai, and Ikigai means a reason for being. And it's about finding something, a way to spend your time that is just perfectly aligned with yourself. And when I look back, I realize that the thing is I'm a very mission-driven person, and interior design didn't allow me to live my mission as fully as I thought I would be able to for a variety of reasons. And when I ended up walking away from interior design, I literally never looked back. This was actually the case where someone asked me like, hey, are you still doing interior design? I have a job. And I was like, nope. I'm not. And I was shocked. So I would just say that, keep yourself open. I tell Natasha all the time that Beyond Your Wildest Dreams is the most ikigai thing I've ever done. It's literally right in the center of my ikigai. It feeds so many different things that make me happy. And, one of the other things I realized about myself is that I don't like physical products. And so one of the things that was challenging for me about interior design is it was just so physical. And I'm very much an idea person. I don't like being hindered by physical things. And so like, it might not seem like a huge shift, but for me, it was a huge shift to realize, you know what? I like ideas. I need to focus on ideas. And that's, BYWD is all about teaching and ideas and sharing information. So I would just say that be open to your journey, because sometimes you have to figure out what you don't like in order to figure out what you do like. And that can be really frustrating because you feel like you're wasting time. But, unfortunately, humans, a lot of us tend to learn best by doing, right? Like, especially if you have a sibling or a kid and you say like, you really should, brush your teeth. Otherwise you're going to have gum issues forever. Like, some people just need to have the gum issues.
And that gum issues. Yeah.
They will never learn from you telling them. And so that was my case. You could not have talked me out of interior design. If you had said, Allegra, you're really an idea person. Is this mission driven enough? I would have said, what? This is perfect. I love this. I had to go through the experience to realize that wasn't what I wanted to do.
So I think it all circle back to being honest to yourself, right? Like seeing what is working for you, what is not working for you, understanding why, and then finding a way to learn from it and not being stuck on it, right? Not seeing it as a failure, but as a learning opportunity and letting it go. Because if you get stuck on it, right, like it will destroy your whole life for nothing. You will just be stuck on it forever.
Right. And I was interviewed by American Express when they were doing some small business stuff. And they asked me, for my number one piece of advice. And I said, date your business before you marry it. And I had done an internship with an interior design company. And I really enjoyed it. So sometimes it just takes a little bit longer, but if you can, do internships, apprentice yourself, try it out as many ways as you can. But yeah, accept that it's not always going to be right the first time. And honestly, looking back now, I just feel like all the things that I've done really helps me in coaching people, because I have had so many different, I developed a food product that I was selling at pop-up events at Williams-Sonoma. You know, so like I have this food background, I have this manufacturing background, I've done interior, like I can relate with a lot of different people because of my experience. So maybe that was the point of going through all this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then comes oh yeah, sure.
No, I'm just saying there's definitely, yeah, exactly. It's there's no accident, right? There's no accidents the way that things unfold the way they do, like not to get super philosophical, but yeah, all of your experiences 100% like culminate into, you know, your life showing up the way that it does. And it doesn't, it's not an accident.
Yeah. Well, my third question is, if your 30-year-old self will be sitting right across you right now, what would you tell her to do or not to do, or to be careful with?
Also, great questions. Just great questions.
Thank you.
Really great. I would tell her something we've mentioned already, that the 70% effort is consistently is enough, right? Because I really felt like in my 30s too, I'd be like all or nothing, right? Funnily enough, not unlike my drinking, like all or nothing. So, you know, like if I would go for something 110%, but then I would be burnt out, and then I would retreat and maybe miss some opportunities because I was kind of like in a space of like recharging my battery, regrouping. And so this like off on kind of experience that I had in my 30s and my 20s, quite honestly, where I would be like full court press and really, really going for something and then really be burnt out. So I would tell myself that because it doesn't sound sexy. 70% effort is it's not sexy. It's not like, you know,
B- effort.
Right. B- doesn't sound sexy. You want A++++, right? So, you know, I would tell myself that the consistency of 70% is far more effectual and giving you results than this hot and cold approach that I was really allowing myself to, you know, or just like I was caught in that cycle. I didn't really get that. I didn't get that the consistency is more important than like major effort, which a lot of times so much effort with not great results, or like just, you know, you giving 110% effort into something that maybe is, again, not super aligned with my priorities, you know, because in my 30s too, I wasn't very clear. Like I knew what my goal was, but I wasn't clear on my values and priorities. Right. So in a way that I am different now. So I think it's super valuable. Those two things. One would just be like, what are your at least top 3 values / priorities that you want to, not just, hey, I want to live in like in this area of town, or I want to drive this kind of car. I want to, you know, like not just those things, like what values wise am I looking to, like Allegra mentioned the word legacy. So, you know, if that's a word that speaks to you, or, you know, like, it's like, who do I want to be? What do I want to be about? As opposed to what do I want to, what do I have like to show for myself, you know? Yeah. And 70%, it's not sexy, but it's effective.
Okay. Very well. Very nice.
So the thing that's coming to mind is something that Natasha and I talk about in our course, and also we kind of have talked about in this interview, which is we're big brain science nerds. And I believe that the thing that would have been most helpful to myself to tell myself in my 30s, and also my 20s, honestly, I probably could have used it more in my 20s, is you can't fight being human. Like we are built a certain way. When we do one thing, like when we do something, this chemical is released. When we do this thing, this chemical is released. And being aware of that just makes my choices so much easier. Because, like, for instance, when you go shopping, you are releasing a little hit of a brain chemical that makes you feel good. But that chemical only lasts a little bit of time, which is why then you want to buy another thing.
Yeah.
And knowing that can help make your consumption easier. Like maybe you do buy the thing, but then you hang it up in your closet and you wear everything that you have. This is actually something I used to do. I would buy the thing, I'd hang it up in my closet, I'd wear anything that was kind of similar to it.
Mhm.
And then in a couple weeks, if I still wanted it, I would keep it. And if not, I would return it.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I ended up returning things. So
Returning.
so just being aware of how we're designed, read books about how our brains work. It will totally help you understand why you're making choices that maybe you think, why am I making this choice again? This is why you're making this choice again. And I would say that for me, that would have been really helpful around men, really, and romantic relationships. I was chasing after something that I was never going to find there, and I didn't understand it because I didn't understand that really I was chasing these brain chemicals.
Mhm.
And so understanding how you're wired as a human, I read a ton, and I'm not one of these people who's like, I only read nonfiction. Okay. I read everything. I read fiction. I read nonfiction. I read biographies. I read autobiographies. I read social sciences. I'm constantly reading because I think that there's something to learn everywhere.
Everywhere.
So definitely, if you don't know a lot about your biology as a human and how we're wired, do some reading about that, because you might say, oh, now I know why I'm doing this thing that I don't want to be doing.
Right. Gives you great insight. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. I think those are extremely helpful tips and experiences to think about. And like we all said, and we all know now that we are in our 40s and beyond, there is always time and energy to change, to learn from our experiences. And 30s are just the beginning. Because I think somehow we are thinking that, now that I'm in my 30s, there is no way to change this or that. No, 30s are just the beginning. So I think there are so many time and so many experiences to learn from. So enjoy those experiences, learn from it, and use your time wisely.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of time. 30s is there's plenty of time.
Well, thank you so much for today. And I hope like people will come and take a taste of your program in those 2-day workshop. Because I think learning about planning, learning to prioritize your life and your values are the essential tools that you will use not in your 30s, but in your whole life. And I think they are also great tools to pass on to your kids and your loved ones, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yes.
100%.
And I have one last little gift that I want to give your listeners.
Mm-hmm.
If you read any of our books, which the ebook version of 3-2-1 Done is only 99 cents. At the back of the book is the biggest discount that we give for our course, Harness the Power of Planning.
Okay.
So for 99 cents, you can get that discount and never look at a to-do list and wonder where to start again.
Okay.
Win.
Okay, I will also have all these informations in the bio section of our recording too. So please check those out and get that discount code then. And I hope it will work very well for you, because I think those are very valuable tools to use. Well, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope to see you again, maybe in the future. And I will definitely come and join to that workshop too.
Fantastic.
And maybe talk about my experiences here.
We'd love to have you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.